kukwini akukome sumo kulelizwe kaula makamandela bakona bange bakithi abasibona sesikhululekile
We live now. Now we live.
Welcome and thank you very much for tuning in, even though we are 23 minutes late. I'm sure you understand the atmosphere in the country is very odd. Last night we heard the president addressing the nation in what we colloquially call the family meeting, where he was lamenting what he called an unprecedented series of events that left our streets on fire and stores looted to barrenness. Whether the president is correct or not, it's yours for you to know. History, recent history tells us that the looting that we have seen in the past week and a half is not unprecedented. We have seen quite a number of times when people went on a rampage and looted shops, whether it was malls, whether it was chemists, whether it was foreigner-owned shops. Looting is not unprecedented. The president needs to get his facts straight. What we need to understand is why. Why do we see this looting happening in our country yet again? This time around, it all began with people claiming they're fighting for the release of former President Jacob Zuma. That was how it all began. Those claiming that they are fighting and protesting the release of for the release of former President Jacob Zuma. That didn't happen. But we saw a number of provinces, 3 that have been prominently reported on: KZN, KwaZulu-Natal, and GP, Gauteng province. We saw also in the Northwest certain hot spots in the Northwest, and also in Limpopo, certain parts in Limpopo. That's 4 provinces. Other provinces said, we do not take part in that. But what really is the cause? We heard the Deputy Minister of Intelligence giving us some perspective. We heard the Minister of State Security giving us commentary, the Minister of Police giving us some commentary. What then does the religious community, especially those of us who are in the majority, the Christian community is purportedly, statistically, in the majority in South Africa, but we're seeing that South Africa has seen quite a number of distasteful behavior. So we've decided to invite one of the leaders in the Christian community who is known for having views that are not only denominational, but a very wide range of views based on the literature that he reads, beginning with the scriptures. So we've invited Joshua Maponga to come and give us some perspective. He is, like I always like saying, I heard this from his wife, by the way, he's a minister without borders. Just like we as journalists, we have reporters without borders. He's a minister without borders. Munis, welcome and thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us. And welcome back. We haven't spoken in a long while. Quite frankly, I don't remember us talking here in the year 2021. How are you doing, sir?
All is well, and what a joy and a privilege to be with you again at an unfamiliar time. I think last time we met in such an environment was at the beginning of COVID, and we were passing our opinions and we got lacerated and lambasted.
Yes.
Here we are again meeting at another junction where we are discussing the crisis in the country.
Yeah, well, you're calling it a crisis. Why do you call it a crisis? Many of us say this is the culmination of what has been happening. It has been known it is going to happen. We saw some videos coming up from 1993 from a man that you know ever so well, the prophet, the late prophet that has, the South African prophet who spoke on things that are seemingly happening right now. Why do you call it a crisis?
It's a crisis, in the words of the president, that it's unprecedented. It's unprecedented when white and Indian businesses are now affected, then it becomes unprecedented. But when black businesses are vandalized and xenophobia is happening, but what is even most unprecedented for me is not the looting, it is the stability of the rand. It is the stability of the economy in the midst of such a crisis. I mean, Jacob Zuma, the former president Jacob Zuma said a statement about repossessing land, and we saw the rand plummeting to unprecedented lows. But right now the country could have lost 5, 15, 20 billion. We don't know how big is the damage. Is it not amazing, if not surprising, that actually the stability of the rand should be, the rand should not be affected? But on Credo Mutwa, we can only understand him when we read him in the context of Chaminuka, Mbuyane, Longauza, and other African, foreseers who have played into this part. Then, because sometimes when you read Credo Mutwa from your own church, you are turned off by his dressing, you are turned off by the way he looks and some of the writings that he has done. But when you put him in context to understand a voice that is speaking at one generation, speaking to another generation, as we have it in our African culture, it is amazing. I watched a couple of his videos in this past week to actually be able to see the things that he was saying and the precision at which they're happening. I mean, I've also read the works of Nostradamus and other scientists and historians out there who predict the future, including our own church ministers also. Some of them who seemed as early as 3, 4, 5 years ago were actually telling us that something like this would happen.
Now, I'd like to hear your take. We have seen what Credo of His Holiness Credo Mutwa has said. We have seen what Nostradamus has said. I could argue for or against, but I don't want us to waste time on them. Today, it's your day for us to milk your wisdom and your perspective and your insights on what is happening. What do you see is happening? What is causing what is happening right now?
Maybe let me start off with statistics that would inform you that if we are saying that 60 to 70% of South Africa is Christian, then maybe let's put it in context that the looters are 60%, if not 70% Christian. And therefore we want to find out, is our theology actually translating itself into our behavior? And secondly, we also want to begin a conversation, the inactivity or the silence of the church in the midst of such a conflict and a crisis. But from a historical and a political perspective, I would want to highlight something very, very critical. When people don't own the means of their production, and the government speaks constantly of us as employees, their biggest statement is, how do you create employment? How do you create employment? We don't want employment. We want ownership. Ownership over the manufacturing, ownership over the mining, ownership over the insurance companies, ownership over the manufacturing of cars, of computers, of clothing. So that when you convert a whole nation into employees, and only a few companies and a few families who are controlling the business seem to be having the bigger part of the cake in bed with the politicians, you create a mistrust between yourselves as leaders and the people that you are leading. And once a community feels like they don't own their country, they don't own the infrastructure, they don't own the development. You can put your malls next to the community. You can put your beautiful buildings and businesses next to the community, and you are putting them there so that you can have cheap labor and cheap transport. And, but when the day people are frustrated and they look at your infrastructure and they look at your buildings, and in their spirit, it actually says, we don't own this, it belongs to them. Then the politics becomes that of us and them. But having said that, we need to be categorically clear that looting, by all means, it is wrong. It must be condemned, both from the legal perspective to the religious perspective. But I think, for me, it's what I might call a political mischief, where an angry father decides to burn a house where he has seen a snake and his children are still inside, and he puts a fire underneath the couch where his children are sitting, because he does not like this snake for some reason. And he forget that after killing a snake, you have killed your children and you have also destroyed your house.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. Maybe we can use that analogy to try and clarify a few things later on in our conversation. But I want to start with the numbers that you have played on the screen right now. You said if 60 or 70% of South Africans are Christian, therefore looters are 60 or 70%. Did I understand you well? That's what you said, right?
If you read statistics, then that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, this is what I want us to try and follow your logic as far as that is concerned. If in your household you have 9 people in your house and you're the 10th one, and you, sir, have a problem, and that problem is the snake in the house. You, sir, you burn the house, and your house is there watching you burning your house, and your wife, her beautiful self, joins you in that, and everyone in that house watches the two of you. Remember, there's 10 people, and you and your wife are burning the house, trying to burn the snake. Would it be correct to say, because 100% of the people in the house are the Mapongas, therefore 100% of the people are burning a house? Would that statistic be follow? Would that statistic be accurate to say, because the identity of these people, 100% of them in the house are Mapongas, they identify themselves as Mapongas? Would it be correct to say, therefore, 100% of the people who identify themselves as Mapongas are burning the house?
The illustration was not even stretching towards those burning the house and their identity. Though I see you want to drive me there. But as
Yes.
the other 8 who are watching the other 2 burning the house, they need to arrest the 2 that are burning the house, so that the 8 can be safe. So I want us to look at it from the perspective that if you think that as a household, you occupy the house also, and you have shares in this house, and you see the 2 heads of the house starting to burn the house. In your common sense, 8 of us must tie these 2 and put them in a cell together. And then the house is safe. I don't want to overstretch that, but if you hear what I'm saying,
I know where you're going.
preserve the house and preserve the greater masses than having the anger of the 2 destroy the estate, which we are going to inherit after the 2 of you are gone.
That's right. I'm with you there. So the blame, therefore, cannot be on the whole house, and yet only 2 are doing wrong. The 2 must be dealt with, and I'm hoping after the address of the president last night, that suggests that he has everything in order. He and his former president have talked about these things. I don't know because we really need to resolve the matter. Now let's address the issue.
Before you rush me there, let me be very clear. You come around and you begin to talk about democracy. You come around and begin to talk about the rule of law. The day I will respect our honorable president, and I'm saying this with a great amount of understanding, is the day when he can walk out of his parliament and walk out of the State House and go and submit himself in prison and show that he is a true democratic leader. Because the corruption we are talking about, from SOPs to the private businesses, to the Shanduka businesses, and many other numerous activities that have been happening in his nostrils, in his hands, with his oversight. He cannot be stepping around and saying he's innocent in the midst of this. I'm not only talking about our honorable president, I'm talking about leaders in the communities, inclusive to the MPs, inclusive to the premiers, inclusive to the cadres in the ANC, including to the cadres in the EFF, including to the parliamentarians in the DA. If there is anyone who has had a corrupt relationship with the government, and you are talking about democracy and stamping out corruption, do the right thing. Let me see the first honest politician who will walk up and submit himself to a prison and say, I have been caught up in a corrupt thing, I also want to come in prison?
I perhaps we should chew on that, because in the scriptures we learn of another corrupt politician, the King David himself, who after having stolen a man's wife, he then decided he's going to kill that man. After killing him, he decided he's going to hide this whole scheme from the nation, corruption of the nth degree. When the prophet came and told him what he had done wrong, his first instinct of justice was, he must pay with his life. He must repay what he has taken from the man. But when he was told, it's you, sir, you are the one who has done this, what did he do? He didn't pay with his life. He didn't repay that which he has taken. He didn't return Bathsheba. He actually went and prayed and fasted and apologized. So I'm not quite sure where you would be getting it from, Bishop, that if he is a man of honor and all of the things you've said, he must walk himself to prison. And yet David never walked himself to prison. Where would you get it from? Theologically, biblically, scripturally, where do you get it from that a leader who has found himself in murky and murky waters should walk himself to prison?
You're making a few assumptions that our honorable president is a Christian, and the principles that bind David should also bind him. And we know for the greatest part of our...
No, Bishop. That's your analogy. I'm saying you as a person who reads the text, you have an expectation of him, whether he's Christian or not. So I'm asking you, where would you get that expectation as a person who reads the scriptures? Because your scriptures don't give you that example that you would expect another person to follow.
In the same wavelength, I'm saying if we are upholding the rule of law and we say we want to do justice, I'm only appealing to common sense that all the political parties that have had illicit relationships with the business community and they were corrupted before they went into power, this does not exclude our honorable ex-president Jacob Zuma, our honorable ex-president Thabo Mbeki, our honorable ex-president, may his soul rest in peace, Nelson Mandela and Mutlante, together with all the ministers. There's nothing to hide here. We fully now in this generation understand the mischief that politicians do with business. So don't say you want to stamp out corruption by making an example of one man when all of you are an example of corruption.
Okay, all right. Now, we need solutions there, Bishop. We are finding ourselves, and I like the fact that you recognize the current statistics, or at least the statistics ever since 2016 from Statistics South Africa, that over 70% of South Africans identify themselves as members of Christian faiths or as adherents of the Christian faith or have attended a Christian community. So if that is the case, why is it that we don't seem to have a solution coming out? Or do you, as one of our leaders, spiritual leaders, do you have a solution to the problem? Because again, against what the president said, it's not unprecedented. Looting has not been unprecedented in this country for years now. We are a country that knows when we are unhappy, we burn things down, we mess up our streets, we burn our schools, we loot. This is what we know. It's not unprecedented. What is the solution?
I want to talk to you as an Adventist member, though right now you're working in a different cap. But let me address you as an Adventist. We teach morality in churches, uprightness, no corruption, no this. We teach our members to become good leaders, good everything. But in the same church, we don't encourage our members to do politics, which I find to be very schizophrenic. That you are an organization that must be producing the right quality of leadership. But in the same church board, in the same church pulpit, politicians are not encouraged, if not condemned. What solution do we have? We need to clean up that disjoining of information between the quality of messages that we are sending and the quality of membership we are producing to participate on the social justice platform. My recommendation is, if we are really true and honest to our theology, we needed to translate our theology into real human beings who will go out there in the community and practically participate in changing, transforming business, architecture, medicine, and participate fully so as to make conscious social re-engineering strategies that are informed by our theology. For example, as a church, you teach vegetarianism, diets, and everything, how to eat nicely, and herbs, and what. But in the same church, you are not very free with using indigenous medicine. In the same church, you don't have the factories that produce vegetables that your own members must eat. You preach very nicely on the pulpit, but you still go back there and buy food that the Muslims, the Jews, and the Inyangas and Batakatis are producing for you. So I kind of find that very funny. Members must not put on short dresses. You must not put on short dresses. You have no one single factory that produces your clothes. You must not listen to music that is outside. You don't even have one single studio where you can record your own Adventist music. So on that note, just shut up. Just shut up. We are good at preaching, but we are not good at doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. Yeah. You never cease to amaze me, Bishop. Okay. So, and by the way, those are all facts that we as Christian people don't have those. And I still am asking the question, what is the solution? Because the fact of the matter is, I'll give you just one example. In the Seventh-day Adventist Church that you have put out there is a writer that penned a brilliant book that when I grew up and I was introduced to the Adventist Church, there was a book titled Back to Eden. The book Back to Eden is a title that has been very influential for many of us who love reading, to learn that actually greens are not muti. Greens, what you call indigenous medicine, by the way, they're not indigenous medicine, they are medicine. That you're qualifying it as indigenous is simply separating it from others as though others are better than, or medicine is medicine. It is most natural. Even what you call Western medicine, by the way, comes and is produced with ingredients from what you call indigenous. So the book Back to Eden teaches us on that very same thing. But let's put that aside, nature aside. How do we solve the situation as the majority in this country? How do we solve the situation of us people who are believers being in the majority, but still things are going wrong? You made an analogy at the beginning. You said, let the 8 bind the 2 and put them in a room together. How do we do that? How do we bind the 2 and put them in a room together? How do we arrest the chaos in our country?
To start with, I'll be very unconventional in my recommendation. The first thing we must do is, let me start with you as a church. You must just go to the bank and take all your money that is in your reserves and open up factories to employ your own members right now who are being retrenched. That's the first point. We need to start investing our resources in terms of creating employment amongst ourselves. We need to start buying farms which produce the food into the market. We need to take our Ministry of Healing strategies and begin to respond to the COVID issues. We need to stop talking and start doing. If I could say it in one sentence, we need to stop theologizing and start being pragmatic about the real issues that the society is facing. And secondly, we need to mobilize ourselves as Christians, as it were, and begin to have a political engagement with the state. I know for the longest of time, we have tried to keep a division between politics and religion. But we will forget that there is a division when your children are now being tortured, when you are now out of employment, when you now no longer have access to your own money, and you find that the issues that you thought that would never affect you, you no longer have the luxury of those benefits. Then you discover church members become looters. Church members become civilians, because hunger does not have religion. Hunger does not have politics. Hunger is hunger. And a hungry man is an angry man, and an angry man is an ugly man. There is no politician who can rule and govern hungry people. Whoever bends the cities when he conquers them will be ruling after ashes.
Yeah. Just to be factual there, Bishop, I understand the analogy that you're using, but to be factual, we have no evidence to point that the looters are Christian. Surely we can agree on that, right?
We can agree. I'm not saying they're all Christians. I'm just giving a statistics that in the midst of this looting, we cannot exclude the Christian community. In some cases, to be more specific, we cannot exclude also Seventh-day Adventists being included in the looting, as much as the Zionists, the Chambers, and the rest of them also were involved in this thing, including the traditional and indigenous people. So the society was looting.
Society was looting, and we are yet to establish who in society was participating in that, as far as religious denominations are concerned. Is that correct?
I'm saying if the society was looting, I'm not excluding anybody. The police were also involved. The soldiers who were not at work, some of them found themselves looting also. So even doctors, I even heard the CEO of another company was also looting. So this is not only about poverty. Yes, I saw another write-up somewhere, another CEO of a company in casual clothes, he decided also to go and loot. So you are dealing with a fundamental human problem.
All right.
I don't know about MPs. Members of parliament who were off duty,
or journalists, or bishops.
But of course, bishops have been looting for the longest of time. Before this, they have been looting way before the other looters came in.
Okay. Well, leave it there, Bishop. Thank you very much, and I appreciate you sitting in my chair there. It was going to be lonely without anyone sitting on it, and I'm here now, away from it. I do appreciate your time. We are going to have, by the way, the bishop speaking on that very same podium in a short while, giving us a message, and we do appreciate that he has made time in the year 2021. It's the first time, by the way, Bishop, you're going to be preaching to us in the year 2021. Let's hope it is not the last time. We'll try and keep on inviting him so that we can have more sermons by him, because he is a brother and a spiritual leader to us, and we always appreciate him coming to speak. Bishop Maponga, thank you very much for coming through and talking to us. We really appreciate your time. From me, Nayelo Podona, and the team there on site, have a wonderful day, have a wonderful Sabbath, and Godspeed. Is the bishop there?
Just make the sound good so that at least they can pick it up also. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. If the sound is good, show me your thumbs there. If the sound is okay, show some love, show some love, show some thumbs up. Wonderful morning here in South Africa, in the southern tip of the continent. The environment has been filtered with turmoil and chaos. We have seen deaths, we have seen looting after the arrest of the ex-president Jacob Magashekisa Zuma. As the Bible would have it, is there a word from the Lord at a time such as this, when the hearts of men are stopping for fear? What is it that the religious environment, the religious organizations must be constantly doing? And many of you who have been watching me for the greatest and the longest time are still arguing, but why is it that you constantly go back to refer to the Bible? Because some of your thinking and some of your teachings seem to be going the opposite direction. Well, I want to share a secret with you today, and the secret is on interpretation. Every time you read wisdom literature, or you read the Bible, or you read ancient texts, you need to read them with an open mind. And let me give you a framework. The text must work firstly for you as an individual. The text must work for you as a family. The text must work for you as a community. The text must work for you as a country, and ultimately the entire human race should be able to respond to this biblical text or this wisdom literature text. Some of these allegories and some of these stories have within them what I might want to call lifelong lessons. Just like our forefathers used to give us those bedtime stories. The baboon and the rabbit, they went to cook each other, and the other one was cooked, and etc. Within those short stories, we're learning how to deal with those that are cunning and how do we preserve ourselves. When you walk up into the biblical text, therefore, many people have forfeited the benefit of enjoying the scriptures, enjoying sacred literature, because they only are looking at the dogmatic, the theological, the soteriological, the historical settings of the passage, and you forget the constant evolution of the passage as it meets different people at different dispensations. I want to share with you a scripture this morning that will, when I was told I was going to come and make a presentation here, this scripture occupied my spirit. And that scripture is found in the book of 2 Kings chapter 7. 2 Kings chapter 7, verses 3 to verse 20. I have looked at this story in the past, but with the crisis that we have at hand right now, I felt moved to share again another perspective to that same text. The story tells us about the 4 lepers. The 4 lepers. It almost sounds like a modern text, because these 4 lepers, because they had leprosy, they were put on quarantine. Yeah, that's a very nice, some of you, all of you now understand what it means to suffer from leprosy if you have been on quarantine. You know, when you have COVID, then you are put on quarantine. Don't try to go to Zimbabwe, by the way, without vaccination. As they had the bus from here with 36 people, the whole bus was put on quarantine. And when they were put on quarantine, the scriptures don't spare us that this quarantine meant that their disease was contagious. And when I'm saying that, I want you to think at a family level. I want you to think at a religious level. I want you to think at a political level. I want you to think about Jacob Zuma. I want you to think about political exiles. I want you to think about churches disfellowshipping people. I want you to think about families distancing themselves. I can't remember the word off my head. When disowning their own children, because their children have done what they deem to be unacceptable. So the concept of quarantine, when I mention quarantine, you need to understand I'm speaking at all those various levels. It's not only physical quarantine, it could be spiritual quarantine, it could be medical quarantine, it could be political quarantine, which we call exile, of course. So these 4 lepers who had a disease that was contagious. This is when a mindset of one man is deemed to be more dangerous for the others than organizations that are stereotyped will always put those members on quarantine. I speak from experience, and I have a track record in this regard of being put on quarantine in religious organizations. When your thinking is not in line with others, yes, it's obvious to preserve others. These ones who are thinking, behaving, infected like this must be put on quarantine. So I forgive you for putting them on quarantine. You are preserving the others. But when they were on quarantine, the passage then becomes very exciting. They sat with themselves. Now, the passage moves away from those that have quarantined them to them who have the problem. They sat with themselves. And they said one to another. Take note. I might get excited. Please hold me right there. They said one to another, if we stay in quarantine, because then there's a political conversation that begins to happen in the background. While they were on quarantine, the city of Samaria was besieged by war. I like that part there. Even if you can put other people on quarantine, it does not mean that you remain with no problems. When you think that you have eliminated the problems, you still remain with new challenges that are facing you as organizations, as religious organizations, as political organizations. Removing, exorcising, disfellowshipping, imprisoning each other does not solve the problems that you have. Locking up anybody in prison does not solve the problem. Poverty is not solved by arresting anybody. You think that you are solving one problem, and there's a book I'm writing, by the way, and let me get some strength to finish it up. The problem of problem solving. The problem of problem solving. Every time you are solving a problem, you are creating a new problem. And when you are solving that problem, you are creating a new problem. Being single is a problem. Marriage is a solution. When you are getting married, you are now getting new problems, married problems. Being barren is a problem. But having children is a problem that is solving other problems, because children bring their own problems. As you are solving those problems, you are getting new problems. When you are poor, you had no friends. Now you are working, you have new problems. Bills and debts and cars that must be paid for. Deadlines that you must meet at work. So each time you are solving a problem, remember that you are solving a problem by creating a new problem. So yes, they eliminated the 4 lepers out of the city, but the fact that they eliminated the lepers, eliminated them, did not mean that they would have no problems of their own. They were besieged. They could not also get food. So when lepers could not get food, the people in the city could not also get food. Now here is where I want to throw a small little curveball for those of you who can think faster with me. There's leper logic thinking that says if we sit here, we die. If we go there to the city to look for food, we die. Now take note. Remember
remaining in a place of quarantine, it is imminent death. Standing up to going looking for solutions, you are still confronted with death. I want to speak to the church in a very loud way without mixing my words. Remaining on our corners of denominationalism, we still die. If we should face up the political environment, we still die. Now let me leave this with you as a moment of thought. A person who has not yet confronted death on both sides are not yet ready to live. Only those who have embraced death can start living. Sit in your cave. It's imminent death. Stand up. You still are going to be confronted with death. You see, this is where I get sometimes excited, almost to a point of anger. Don't deal with people who are afraid of death. Social death, religious death, people are going, what are people going to say? They are going to, and you're afraid, and you live a myopic, less quality life because you're afraid of dying. I mean, you look after your wife, you're still not good enough. You look after your children, you're still not good enough. You can never get it right in this world. Put that between your heads. There is death in front of you when you are seeking for solutions. There is death where you are when you decide we will not participate in the political conversation. As a church, our religion and our doctrines don't allow us. Oh, well, sit where you are with your cankered doctrine. Your funeral is coming in your inactivity. But I love the conclusion that the lepers came up with. We would rather die in search of solutions than die sitting on our theories of despondency and non-cognitive participation. Doing nothing is a funeral. Doing something is a funeral. I want you to understand that. And by the way, remember, those who have tried nothing have failed nothing. If you spend the rest of your life trying nothing, you are 100%, you fail nothing. It's only those who have started, who have stood up to try something. They have failed, they have failed, they have failed. Yes, they fail because they are trying. Have you not read the passage in the Bible that says a righteous man, though he falls 7 times, yet he will walk again? Take note. Let me ask you a question. Why does a righteous man fall 7 times? I want to give you a moment to think about that. Why does a righteous man fall 7 times? He falls 7 times because every time he falls, he stands up again. He falls and he stands up again. The Bible would not have said if you fall 7 times, because you cannot fall when you have fallen. But you hear in that passage that with every fall, there is every stand. With every fall, there is every stand. And 7 times later, you still find this man standing. They would rather die. We would rather die as families, as a church, as a country, and as a continent. We would rather die looking for solutions than dying sitting around doing nothing. Then, when you make a resolution for solutions, see, this is another part that excites me. It is the divine interruptions of human decisions, which we might want to term spiritual conversations when resolutions at a physical level are made. You see, when you make your decision at your spiritual level, please take note of this. When you make a decision at a spiritual level and your life is prepared to be offered as a sacrifice, you switch on the participation of the spiritual realm to meet up with your spirit. I get excited on that because that's where Romans says the Spirit of God confirms and connects with our spirit, to confirm within our hearts that we are sons and daughters of God. Therefore, God does not remain as an abstract being in the space of none-reach. But when we make our decisions within our spirits, then the Black Book says, and God also, the supernatural, You may call it karma. You may call it the spiritual world. You may call it God. I don't care what you'll call it. But when a decision is made and life is placed as a sacrifice, heaven cannot shut up. If you have forgotten, remember Abraham. When he had resolved he will kill his son, and he lifted his spear, his knife to kill his son, heaven did not shut up. Abraham, stop right there. Why? Because when a human being is committed to their path, the spiritual world empowers their decisions and moves with them. But this passage is even more exciting. When they made their resolution in the night, that's the sermon of another day. You know, the conversations of the night. You know, what is it that you speak in the night? I remember the men from Emmaus who were also walking in the night. And while they were walking and talking about this man who had been resurrected, the men who had been resurrected came to join them. Now hear my theory and what I call Pong's theology. Your conversations attract spiritual company. Your conversations, they attract spiritual company. That which you are talking about comes closer to you. So in the night, they resolved, hayi bafethu, okungasi kufa ikuphi, kusiri kufa ndokuphi. It is death either way. You see, when a dead man stands, so that's why I always tell people you can't kill a dead man, because he's dead already. He's dead already. So go and find someone that is living, and the living are the cowards. When they agreed to die, then the Bible says the heavens were moved. I like that part there. The angels were moved. I like that part there. The spiritual realm responded with rumblings, with thunder, with wind, which blew throughout the entire camp of the enemy. They thought that the Egyptians were coming. They thought that the people in Samaria had actually called another army to come and kill them. They heard the voices that were happening in the spiritual realm. And I want to say this, there was a speed sound break where the conversations of the spiritual world manifested in the physical world. They heard the sound. They did not see them, but they heard them. The war was created in their own minds, in the atmosphere. There was chaos in the camp. They ran, the black book says, leaving their clothes hanging on the thorn trees, naked. They ran for kilometers on the end, never to be seen again. When you make your decisions strongly enough, heaven can move ahead of you and perform for you that which you cannot perform for yourself. Sometimes fear is created because you cannot see the future. Come on, hear the preacher today. Fear not the future. Your conversations have been heard. Oh, come on, someone out there. Come on, someone. What you have agreed to do. Now you can begin to read that passage. I wish other pastors were here and I could be telling them where 2 or 3 have agreed on earth. Come on, come. Now that makes sense now. When you agree and you bind something on earth, heaven must also bind it. I think that makes sense right here. The 4 men sat down, agreed, and they bound their covenant together. We die together. Heaven agreed with them and interjected in their projection. They walked, come on somebody, they walked on a one victory. They walked on a battle conquered. They walked tomorrow where God was yesterday. You know, when you are walking in the footsteps of the spiritual being that has walked ahead of you, there's nothing new. You are just following in the footsteps of success. They found the camps were empty. Follow the logic. The first camp, they went in and they ate. The second camp, they went in and they ate. The third tent, they started collecting the gold. And then the fourth tent, they were starting to collect the gold. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Start dealing with fundamental issues, the issues of the stomach. Start with the stomach. Stomach is sorted. If you want to be a politician, you want to be a religious leader, you want to become anything in this life, never undermine the politics of the stomach. If people are hungry, You cannot rule a hungry stomach. And I know many of us right now who are educated, sitting on your leather couches in your homes with your heaters around yourself, busy tweeting and sending comments about looting. Wait until you are looted also. Wait until you also run out of your own resources. I laughed my lungs out in the course of the week. Another place in Winterfeld, there, they ran out of water. The whole city for almost a week. And people are afraid to go to the toilet in the bush because they are waiting for water to come in the house. You know, amazing what civilization has done to us. Hey, come on, just go and buy yourself a hoe. Go and buy yourself a small little tool. Go to the bush, dig a hole, and do what is almost best to do. Fertilize the ground. There's nothing wrong with that. Even cows and chickens do that every day. There's nothing sacred about a human being going to the toilet in the bush. When resources are reduced, you go back to default. Deal with the stomach issues first. And after the stomach issues, then you hear they started moving over to other cosmetic issues, inclusive to collecting of gold and etc. Does that sound like politics to you? Does that sound like a religious leader to you? Politicians who in their first entrance into office, they come in and the first things people, human beings do, they firstly start dealing with their stomachs. And when their stomachs are full, then they start dealing with issues of gold, issues of properties, issues of power, and etc., and etc. But on this passage, what you don't want to miss, which I want all of us as Africa to begin thinking about. Africa has been put on quarantine for the longest of time. We have been locked up in the caves of the uneducated, the caves of the indigent, the caves of the unbankable, the caves of the unemployed. And we want to tell you as Africans, wherever you are a dark continent. That's what they say. If we remain where we are as a continent, we are still going to die. If we stand up to challenge the West, we are still going to die. Come on, guys. Which way is life? Maponga, shut up. I'm still going to die. Maponga, talk. I'm still going to die. Either way, I'm a dead man. Why must I be afraid of death when I'm already dead? It's just a matter of a timetable as to when am I dying. But it is sure, with no food, you are going to die. From these caves where the African family, the African church has been locked in, I want to challenge all of us. Let's get up on our feet. We would rather die looking for solutions than die massaging our poverty and our lack of food as a means of grace and entrance into heaven. Yes, when you get into power as a politician, eat also in the first tent. Come on, guys. You can eat in the second year. Come on, guys. You can eat in the third year. But talk to me, guys. On the fifth year, you are still eating. On the sixth, seventh year, you are still eating. On the 20th year, you are still eating. 27 years later, you are still eating. For Zimbabwe, 40 years later, you are still not satisfied. Eating. The lepers reached a point of resolution. And I think on another day, I must come and speak about that resolution. When they finally looked at each other, the lepers, and they said one to another, we are not doing right. Come on, guys. We are not doing right. We need the religious leaders to say those words. We are not doing right. We need the politicians to say those words. Come on, Dr. Ramaphosa, with your top 6, look at each other and say, we are not doing right. Dr. Mnangagwa and your fellow brothers, sit around one day and look at each other. When you look at sewage pipes that are bursting and children are playing in there in sewage water and people are drinking sewage water, come on, guys. We need to look at each other, Chamisa and your fellow friends, and look at each other and say, we are not doing right. The pharmaceutical companies out there, I want to challenge you. Look yourself in the face and agree with me. we are not doing right. The banking infrastructure. Look at yourself. You have become multi-billionaires. But people that you say are banking the money for, they are sinking into deeper and deeper poverty. We need these words to be spoken, and spoken loudly, so that the entire continent and beyond, we can hear these words. We are not doing right. Come on, read the scriptures with me. Today is the day of good news, yet we are keeping it to ourselves. In the midst of such abundance of minerals, of resources, materials, human resource, education, food. How can we be so hungry? With so much water, how can we have no electricity? With so much coal, how can we not have electricity? We need to speak those words. We are not doing right. It's a day of good news. We have the resources. We can't keep it to ourselves. Come on, let us go and report this to the city, so that everybody else can come also and enjoy the benefits with us. I think that's the conclusion of the sermon right there. When you have eaten and you are full, please remember others are still starving. Others are still hungry. Invite others also. How did you make money? It was a difficult process. You are lying. If you got that money legitimately, it must be easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Help others also to become what you are like. We are not doing right when we succeed by ourselves. We are not doing right when we eat by ourselves. We are not doing right when we quarantine others, yet we are also due for quarantine ourselves. There must be a resolution within every heart, recognition of error and evil. Announcements tell others how they can also access help. And they shouted because they could not get closer to the city. Sometimes good news don't need to be spoken nicely. Just say the word, share the word. Those who hear the word will be liberated. But remember this one thing. Every time you talk, God is in conversation. You are confronted with death on either side. When you make a resolution, heaven will run ahead of you. You will walk on the yesterday of God's success. When God moves ahead, you have no sword that you must speak up. There's enough food for you to eat. But when you are full, remember others are hungry also. Carry the news to those that need it. Let's rehabilitate each other. In the midst of this turmoil, I want to challenge and remind all of you, either way, we are dying. We remain where we are, we die. We go over there, we die. Rather we die looking for solutions than die in the presence of our own fears. May the Lord God of heaven bless you. May he cause his countenance to shine upon you. May the great light of the omnipotent God shine upon the continent of Africa. May peace prevail in the land of South Africa and beyond. May our leaders come to a realization of the plunder. May heaven's grace invade our own fears and walk ahead of us. Let this peace be found in our land. Let food not be short on our tables. Let sicknesses and diseases be kept far from our borders. Let the rains fall upon the continent, and let the people harvest their fruits. And let the nation grow from strength to strength. Oh Lord, remember us even at this moment of great despair. Let us hear the sounds in the air of the great rescue squad from the presence of the omnipotent. May the grace of our Lord be with us all. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory forever and ever. Let us have this kingdom. Let us also develop power until eternity future. Amen.